It is art fight season once again, stars. As someone with a 4-year losing streak, I feel pretty qualified to teach some basics, including general etiquette, and just a few things you might not have thought about before. So I'm going to be splitting this video into a few sections, so like tips for new players, returning players, general stuff for everyone, and then some personal things that I do to prep. And I also want to make note that this is general info for your prepping process, not so much a tutorial of the website or creating the art you'll be using for your characters. So my goal with this video is to just share something for everyone new and returning, so you have a better streamlined art fight prep and a fun time competing in the year fight. So let's get to it. Do not get butthurt if someone doesn't revenge. I feel like this is pretty clear, but no one is obligated to attack you. July is a busy month. People might just have stuff going on. And at the end of the day, this is a free art you're getting or receiving, so losing's not the end of the world. Also, don't attack early. It ruins the fun. I think there's a rule where you get banned if you do that, so I personally would not recommend that. Set your filters. Number one thing, set them now. You do not want to accidentally see triggering content. Filters are used to basically, well, they filter content. You can filter stuff like gore, and like eye strain stuff. So really at the end of the day, it's for your safety to set filters you might need. Next tip, create character profiles for 6 of your favorite OCs if you have 6. I know I struggle to hit that number, but preferably put some variety in there if you can. A lot of people won't view your other OCs because it goes off page unless you do a revenge chain, in which case they might do that if you're like going back and forth with a lot of characters. But otherwise, put your favorites up top because most people will be seeing those. And once again, make sure to set filters and permissions for each character so the fan art is as respectful and accurate as it can possibly be. Some people will only draw certain types of OCs, so like furries, object heads, like closed species, fandom OCs, stuff like that. So don't get yourself down if someone you attacked doesn't revenge because they might only draw one type of character. And along with this, create like reference sheets for your characters, especially the ones you want art of. So like these first 6 that'll be at the top of your profile, just because people will probably be looking at those the most, and thus you want to make sure they're accurate to the characters. Next tip, save a handful of characters before the fight because of lag. And yeah, I mean, I think everyone knows at this point, any returning player knows it's just so bad. Like the website X, like it just dies. The website dies for like 3 or 4 days, although recently it has been better, but it basically craps out and you cannot do anything. So I recommend saving probably like, for me personally, I do 3 to 6 depending on motivation, but whatever you feel comfortable with is how many you should save ahead of time, so that you can work through them while the website is down and then post them afterwards. Next tip, do not burn yourself out. Only make as much art as you can handle. No one is going to be mad if you don't get to a revenge on time before the fight ends. Like, honestly, this is a game, so you should really take into account like your own health and well-being during this. You're not going to like die if you don't, you know, get that final attack in. Take it as you can handle it, basically. I don't think it's a great idea to overwork yourself because burnout can last like a super long time and it's just not worth it. The next tip, when receiving fan art, it's customary to comment a thank you. You don't have to, but I mean, it is like making art for people, and I know I like to get a thank you. And I imagine you probably would as well if you drew art for someone. So don't feel discouraged if you attack and the other person doesn't leave a comment. Like I said before, July is the middle of summer, and they're probably busy, but they will see it eventually. The next tip, be mindful of when people are or were last active, if you can view that, because sometimes people hide it. Someone who didn't participate last year is a lot less likely to revenge your attack compared to someone who is consistently active, and it really depends person to person, so do this at your own discretion. Draw whatever character you like at the end of the day, because it is about having fun. And if you are really like dead set on like getting a revenge, you should take into account a user's like attack defense ratio if you super duper like you need fan art, which again, like it's but the closer their percentage is to 100, the more likely they are to attack. Most people will probably be between 30 and 150, give or take. So if you can get on the high end of that or above that, that's a good chance that you will be getting a revenge for your attack. And lastly, for new artists, avoid waiting till the last minute to create art assets for your characters, create refs. Burnout is like the last thing you need before a month-long art competition. And I know as artists, we can kind of tend to procrastinate, but please do not. It's better to not create new stuff at all than have to get burnout right before the competition, because it kind of just puts a damper on it. I mean, like for me anyway, I've always just like avoided rushing at the last second because it's not fun, you know? So do what you're comfortable with, and if you can do a cram sesh at the end of June, go ahead, but I would not recommend it. That's all the tips I have for new artists, but let's move on to some returning tips. So, first tip for returning artists, clear out any bookmarks you have. I like to do this ahead of time, but people may have privated or archived characters and you may have lost interest in some of the characters you bookmarked before, so you might as well go through and do a reassessment of what you have, just in case. I also recommend not bookmarking too many characters at once. From first-hand experience, like having a lot of them does not feel good. It just feels so overwhelming. And I feel that it's better to seek out OCs to bookmark only after you feel you're prepared to handle more, because it kind of just snowballs and it builds up, and it's just not fun, basically, is what I'm saying. Next tip, update artwork for OCs and edit pieces if necessary. Obviously, this is kind of a given, along with like updating ref sheets and stuff like that. So one thing I also want to take into account is updating permissions and character rules if needed. I know sometimes characters might change with time, so just like reconsider what rules you set initially and if they need to be updated or changed or removed, and rearrange your OCs if you want to. I know some people order by preference, which is what I do, but people can also like label with stars or icons like emojis or something if they want to prioritize certain OCs over other ones. Next tip, if you like, you can take a note of people you didn't get to revenge last year and bookmark some of their OCs. It's like a pseudo revenge. As someone who, I mean, not to brag or anything, but as someone who revenges every single attack, I don't usually do this, but I have heard of people doing this, which I think is fair, because it's kind of like a not quite it's like a revenge that isn't quite a revenge, you know, and people like to see it, especially early on in the fight, because I mean, for me anyway, I always I'm excited to see that first attack, so you could make someone's day by doing that. And last tip for returning artists, if you haven't already, consider joining the Discord. I don't usually interact purely because I'm not good at keeping up with Discord servers, but if you're more social than I am, you may fare better than me. It's a really nice community, and there's always fun stuff going on over there, so it's pretty worth it to check out. And just a little intermission, I wanted to pop in real quick to say, if you're liking the art of the video, drop a like and subscribe. After my 4-year-ass leave of absence, I'm planning on posting more soon, and that would show me you're interested. So check out my Instagram too if you're interested in art and if you feel so inclined with that. Thank you. Back to the tips. Alright, so this is just some general stuff for everybody, but make sure your intro sheets are up to date. I'll put an example of that on screen now, just because I don't know if there's a name for what they're called. And also your bio, just because a year is a long time. Things might have changed, some people customize them, and you might want to go for a different aesthetic, stuff like that. Bookmark characters that you're interested to draw, obviously that's kind of a given. I might as well say it here, just as kind of a precaution. And also check recent news posts on ARTFIGHT. There's a lot of important stuff in there, even if you don't think it's important. It feels good to be in the know, just to stay updated, basically. I've also noticed people make hit lists, especially more recently. It's basically like a plan for who they'll attack, and if you like that idea, you can go for it. I usually go more off of bookmarks and OC designs rather than specific people, but I'm sure a lot of people would prefer to go that way instead. And just a little tip, since ARTFIGHT is kind of ass, they don't have a search feature, so if you're looking for a specific user, just type their username into your own profile URL. I like to go to just the URL at the top of the page and then backspace mine and put in the other person's name. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward, kind of just general stuff. So let's move on to things that I like to do personally. So first thing I like to do personally is It's like such a pain in the ass, but I go through every bookmarked character I have and rearrange them by team. So like, for example, last year I was on vampires and the opposing team was werewolves. So I went through and I labeled all of the werewolves as like a 2 or a 3. I know people use like a bunch of numbers, but I like to do 0, 1, 2, 3 or whatever. So I put all of my werewolf OCs at like a 2, and then all of the OCs I felt neutral about were like a 1, and then all of the vampire OCs were a 0, just so I can prioritize points basically, because I was on my grinding shit last year. I had like 20, I don't know what I was doing, but I got 27 attacks somehow, and I was like cranking that shit out. I felt pretty good. Anyway, I like to order mine by team, just as kind of a plan to go in order, plus all of the ones I can do first are at the top of my bookmarks when I click on it, so I don't have to scroll through a bunch of pages of OCs. I also like to put numbers super high for friends. I like to surprise them with fan art early in the competition because it's kind of just like always exciting to see that first attack, so that's one thing I would recommend. I reconsider my interest in my OCs and I reorder them based off of how much I care about them. I know it probably depends on the person, but I've never really been an OC person, so this is something I would probably do more than most, but if you feel so inclined, go ahead and try that out. And one thing I really like to do is go through tags relating to my interests. So like one year it was TF2 and I bookmarked a bunch of TF2 OCs. I've done clowns a couple of times, certain animals as well. If I'm feeling a certain vibe, even if I don't end up drawing them all, it kind of hypes me up for the fight and it gets me motivated, and that's always fun. And my last tip, for returning artists, usually this, you can't really do it for newer artists, but I like to do this on downtime, like after the fight. Usually around December is when I tend to do it, but for my older attacks I like to make custom thumbnails so that my old art is like biohazard, like contained in like a locked room. I don't want it exposed, and there might be a rule against keeping the thumbnail as accurate to the art. I remember reading that at one point. I'm not really sure how much it's enforced, so don't feel intimidated to change it because I think everyone does, but that's just something I like to do to kind of make my old profile, like if you go to my attacks, I like to cover it up a little bit and it looks nice too. So if you want to do that, I would also recommend it. And that's just about everything I wanted to cover in prep for ARTFIGHT. I noticed a lot of the videos I saw on the topic were leaving out some things that I thought were worth mentioning. So here we are. Hopefully all of these tips helped and you feel better prepared for the fight. I know it can be kind of exciting to do it for the first time or even just coming back because it's been so long. So let me know in the comments if you have any tips that I didn't discuss in this video, or if you want to, drop your username so I can check out your account. Happy fighting, everyone!